Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Give Back Show. Each week, I hope to be able to shine the light on people who run charity leagues and events. There is so much good going on with people in the fantasy football world that I hope to be able to encourage more people to participate and to contribute. So each week, we'll learn more about the person behind the league or event. And then we'll also learn about what led them to the charity and how more people can get connected. So, our show tonight spotlights such a person and charity league. My guest this week is Shane Barrett, a contributor to Going for Two and someone who runs the Polly's Playoff charity tournament for the Walk to End Alzheimer's. So, hi, Shane. Welcome to Give Back. Thank you for showing. And how are you doing right now?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Rick. I love the concept of this show and need to check out previous episodes to see how I can be involved in more charity leagues or at least support others in their charity leagues. And I'm doing great. As we were talking about pre-show, I got all four kids to bed now.
Oh,
So
great.
now we get to hang out and chat about Polly's playoff.
Super. Well, I think what we'll do first is we'll let the audience get to know a little bit more about you. So, why don't you tell us all about yourself?
Yeah. So obviously, my name's Shane Barrett. You can follow me on Twitter. Elon Musk's Funhouse is what I like to refer to it as, at FF Shane B. And you can follow the tournament account at Polly's Playoff. So announcements should come from there. Uh, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. Was born and raised there. Went to Hoover High School. So Marlon Humphrey and George Pickens are both fellow alumni with me.
Awesome.
Um, and then went to 1 year of college at Berry College in Rome, Georgia, and then transferred back to eventually graduate from UAB, University of Alabama at Birmingham. Um, I've been in the medical field for most of my career as a medical sales rep. And now, after living 4 years in Greenville, South Carolina, and doing some software sales there, we moved back to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and I am the center manager for a Lind Care Center in Tuscaloosa.
Well, awesome.
So,
And I think I heard you mention you have children. Can
yes.
you have family, and are they involved in either your fantasy football stuff or in the charity?
Yeah, so I have four daughters. None of them is old enough yet to really be involved in the charity tournament. Um, the oldest one is 6, and then
Yeah,
the
but wait,
youngest
no.
well, yeah. And then the youngest is 8 months, so none of them are involved in the tournament. My wife does play in our family fantasy football league.
Oh,
That
awesome.
is me, my dad, some cousins. Um, one uncle plays in it, different things like that. And I finally won that league for the first time this year. Um,
Congratulations.
it's been a long time coming. I usually suck in that league, so I made the playoffs last year finally after a drought, and then I won the championship this year. So she plays in that with me, and then she did. Gosh, what was it? There was a best ball tournament done on Sleeper that she did with me this year.
Oh,
So
awesome.
she's gotten a little more involved with it, and then she helps with kind of the behind the scenes stuff with Polly's playoff, specifically making sure that everyone is donated
Oh,
that's supposed to, because the whole reason for Polly's is her grandmother, so she's heavily invested in raising money for the Walk to End Alzheimer's.
awesome. And we'll learn more about the charity and your wife's connection to it. Um, I think you mentioned Alabama and also South Carolina, but
Mhm.
what team do you root for? Do you have a favorite team?
Yeah, so for a while in the Twitter streets, I was made fun of for having 3 favorite teams.
Hmm.
And those teams at the time were the Packers, the Cowboys, and then there's the Browns. So I'll explain all of those and then tell you that none of them is my team now.
Okay.
So the Browns was I'm a huge Baker Mayfield fan. Um, I love Baker. We're actually about the same age, and I just love the way that he plays the game. So once he got drafted by the Browns, I was like, all right, I'm going to follow him here, cheer for him and whatnot. And so cheered for them until he got traded, and then kind of followed him to Carolina a bit. Even got him to sign a Panthers hat when he was at training camp because we were able to go and see him. And then the Packers, my mom's entire family is from Kenosha, Wisconsin, for the most part. So they're all Packers fans from the oldest to the youngest. So I kind of cheered for them as well. And then the Cowboys, my dad and his dad were Cowboys fans. So my dad, I think, still cheers for the Cowboys. I don't really know.
It's a little tougher this year or the last few
It
years.
is. I kind of feel like the curse because they haven't won a Super Bowl since I've been alive. Like literally, I think the last time they won, I was maybe a year old. So, it's just I don't know. I feel like the curse somehow, but
Well, hopefully you keep that curse going. I'm a Houston Texan fan, not a Dallas Cowboy fan.
oh no, then you're really not gonna like my favorite team because my favorite team now is the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Oh, okay. Well, that yeah, and that's going to be a tough year too. So,
Yeah.
so you're not just picking the winner, the front runner. So that's
No,
good.
I've never really liked to just pick the front runners. I like a good underdog story. Um, and honestly, like especially with the NFL, more so than like college football, I've usually picked players to cheer for versus teams, and that's kind of been why my fandom has jumped around a lot, especially
Mhm.
as a kid. Like as a kid, I was a Colts fan for a while because of Peyton Manning, and then when he went to the Broncos, I switched to the Broncos because I was cheering for him wherever he was. So it was kind of the same with Baker, but then I was like, I want to pick a team and stick with them. Now I did pick that team based on I love Trevor Lawrence, love Travis Etienne, and then they drafted Tank Bigsby out of Auburn, so that was kind of the final kicker for me. And I think I've always had a soft side for them. I like Fred Taylor, Maurice Jones-Drew, players they've had in the past a lot too.
And so, as a Texan fan, I know, or I get to see a little bit more of the Jaguars during the course of the season, and we even, I think, stole one of your wide receivers. So,
Yeah.
but I was just kind of curious, what are your thoughts on the team's prospects for 2025? Trevor Lawrence, especially, but
Yeah.
just in general, what are your thoughts on the team going forward?
I hate to give this answer, but as a whole, like for the team, I think it's still too early to tell with what Cohen is and Gladstone are going to do.
Sure.
I think this week will be very interesting with free agency opening up. So that'll, I think, give us a better picture of kind of where they could end up. I think I still think that division is
Pretty wide
kind of
open.
wide open. Yeah, like the Col like but it's not wide open for the same reasons as it used to be. Like,
Sure.
it used to be wide open because nobody was good, except, like, when Peyton was there, obviously, like, the Colts were dominant, but, like, then there was kind of a lull after he left, I feel like, where no one was, like, this elite super team or anything like that, and now it kind of feels like, really, I'd even kind of like, the Titans are obviously bringing up the rear, and I think the Jags had just a train wreck of a year last year, but I think the talent is there for the Jags, the Texans, and the Colts to where any one of those three, I think, can end up winning the division. So it'll be interesting to see how free agency and the draft plays out for the Jags. I'm excited for Trevor Lawrence going forward just because of what Cohen's track record with being
With
with
quarterbacks, yeah.
quarterbacks, with being with under McVay, his time at Kentucky. Like, I think he's got an interesting track record of being a coach and improving quarterback play wherever he's gone. To where I'm excited for Trevor Lawrence going forward. I'm really, really excited for Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby
Okay.
because
So
he
you're looking
likes.
at a bounce back for ETN?
Yeah, I think so. And I think Bigsby will continue on the track that he was on this year. Uh, just with what we saw him do with Rashad White and Bucky Irving, and then even Sean Tucker some. Like, I'm really excited for the run game in general and just the way he uses running backs.
And just one more question, since we did mention wide receiver.
Yeah.
Are you looking for them to add via the draft, or you think they're going to go after a free agent? How do you think they're going to kind of bump back the wide receiver
My
group?
dream is T. Higgins to reconnect with the old Clemson connection. I don't know if that's going to happen. If they do go the draft route, I honestly think what I'd rather them do is similar to what they did last year and trade back and try and grab a receiver in the middle to late first instead of at 5.
Sure, that
Uh,
makes sense.
I think Ted McMillan is worthy of a top 5 pick, but I don't know how much he complements Brian Thomas's game, and I
Yeah.
would rather draft someone that's gonna complement him. Honestly, my favorite receiver, I think, out of this class is Emeka Egbuka.
Oh,
So
he's real good. And the
I've
Texans are also rumored to be very interested in him
they
for
are.
Ohio State reasons. So
Yes, absolutely. So, but I don't know, I feel like him and Dell and Christian Kirk all play a similar role. Now, Dell's probably not gonna play this year just off
yeah,
the
he won't
injury
play at
and when
all.
it
Yeah.
occurred. So it'd be very interesting if they drafted Igbuka, but I mean, obviously that connection's there with CJ Stroud, so
Sure.
it makes a lot of sense.
And you're right. It's going to be a fun season, and one where I think, as usual, there's going to be some surprises throughout the
Mhm.
season and in the division. So it'll be fun to watch it all play out. And of
Yeah.
course, we'll be playing alongside of them with the fantasy football leagues. And
Yeah.
so that really leads me to my next question: is what got you into fantasy football?
Yeah, my dad,
Oh,
actually. I
good.
was, 10 years old. He had a league that he was doing. He's also been in medical sales for as long as I've been alive, and he had a league that he was doing with other reps and some doctors, things like that, and he was like, "Hey, I want you to do this with me." I was like, "Alright, cool." I had no idea what I was doing.
Mhm.
Uh, but I think the first time I won the league, I was, like, 13 or 14.
Wow.
So that was fun. That was a really good year for me because I won the fantasy football league, and then I won the March Madness bracket.
Oh,
So
nice.
I had like $600 to burn as like a 13 or 14-year-old. So I went and bought a new Xbox.
And it's again, I've don't play with my family. I've two daughters. In fact, I'll raise up and say girl dad, which I'm
Not
about.
oh, I don't have my hat on.
And and both my daughters are a bit older, as you could tell from the gray hair. I've a little bit of, oh, that is awesome. I'll have to try to track that hat down for you. Maybe
I'll
I'll.
send you the link.
Oh, thank you very much. So, my oldest one actually now has kind of shown some interest in playing in fantasy football. She's not into football at all, but I think like she's very competitive, so she kind of,
Yeah.
I think, is attracted to the idea of winning. My question was going to be, since you mentioned both winning a league with your wife and also winning one with your father, is there any special, I don't know, victory dance, or do you pull out the big wrestler's belt that to kind of show it off for at
Not for our
family
family
dinner
league.
time?
No, not for our family league. I probably should invest in something like that. But our family league is super competitive. Like my cousin and his wife are in it, and they are always competing for the playoffs. My uncle's in it; he's usually competing for the playoffs. My dad is usually competing for the playoffs. My wife, other than this year, is usually competing for the playoffs. Like it's a fun and competitive league, especially for a family league. So I really enjoy it.
Well, awesome. And that's, again, I think it's really great. Shows closest of family, which I think is important. Just,
Yeah,
being able to spend time and share something you enjoy doing with your family. And then it just, adds to the fun when, there's a competitive aspect, because you kind of
yeah.
want to, if whether it's with your best friends or with your family, you do want to be able to win. And we'll talk about Polly's playoff and my poor experiences in those leagues. But
Excuse me.
um, so you started playing, thanks to your dad. So how
Mhm.
long have you been playing fantasy football?
20 years actually. I started when
20
I was
years.
10.
Oh my gosh. So that's a good amount of experience. So how many leagues, and I don't want to get you in trouble at home.
You won't get in trouble at home because I've cut back, and B, my wife's rule was you can be in as many leagues as you want as long as you don't talk about it all the time. So I learned how to tailor when I was going to talk about it. And I don't know the number off the top of my head now, actually, which I
Yeah.
think is a good thing.
Yeah, I was gonna
But I
say probably wise if she's listening in. We don't
No,
want
it's a lot like there was in the peak of the pandemic and whatnot, especially when I was working from home, it
Mhm.
was a lot easier, obviously, to be in a lot of leagues. I
Sure.
probably got up into the 30s.
Wow. Okay.
If and that included some best ball, but it got out
Best
of
balls don't
control.
count. I keep saying that. Best
I
balls
know.
do not
They
count.
count as a half a league. But now I think I'm down to like 15 total, and that includes charity and redraft and things like that.
And
So,
that's also true for me. I was up to about 25, I think, at my worst, or what my wife and family thought was my worst,
uh-huh.
is, they were all managed leagues.
Yeah.
So it was taking more and more attention and time away from things I should have been focused on a little bit more. So, I've gotten down to 15. I might try to pare that down a little bit more. But the one thing I do try to focus on is um, just playing in charity leagues.
Yeah.
One, because they tend to be very fun and just as competitive. But two, I like to be able to think that what little I'm contributing is really helping. And so,
Yeah.
and we'll talk more about the charity and the charity league. Um, but I think you also mentioned you're a contributor for Going for Two.
Yeah, so unofficially, officially, I will be contributing for Going for Two. Probably mostly this off season, trying to figure out the time management aspect of it. But
Mm,
it's actually a repeat for me. I was with Jeff and Going for Two towards the middle of like my content creation career at one point. And then honestly, for the last two off seasons, I've done the personal league podcasts that he does. Um, So still kind of always been contributing with him, um, just not officially as part of the Going for Two team. And I texted him a few weeks ago and was like, "Hey, I think it's time for me to come back home and contribute with Going for Two. So whatever you need, just let me know." So still trying to iron that out and find the time to actually do it. But that'll be my plan for the off season, and we'll see about the during the season.
One of the things we're also catching when we're talking with folks who are running some of these charity leagues is that time management is really important, especially when you're
Yeah,
trying to balance family and work. Obviously, there's the needing to make a living,
yeah,
and then also doing things that you love around content creation. So, I'll ask you a few questions while we start diving into Polly's playoff tournament. In fact, maybe this is a good segue to that. Why
sure.
don't you share with us information about Polly's playoff?
Yeah, so as mentioned in the intro, Polly's Playoff is a tournament for the walk to end Alzheimer's. This will be year 6, and so it started. I think the first year was officially 2020, if my math is right. And the reason we started it is my wife's grandmother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and eventually passed away from it in November of 2019. We had been advocates for it and raising money through the Walk to End Alzheimer's, but then after she passed, we really were like, okay, we've lost her now. We really need to step up our game, especially because of some of the genetic kind of issues that like how it gets passed down through families and what could potentially be coming for us down the road. So um, we were trying to figure out a way to raise more money, spread more awareness for it, and I was lucky enough to be in my very first Scott Fish Bowl that year, um,
Mhm.
and I was in Scott's division. And so we were talking in our group chat on Twitter, and there was something that he said that just stuck with me. It was like, no matter if you have a platform, no matter how big it is, try to do good with it and make an impact. And I was like, I'm going to try and start a charity tournament this year. And I started off, like, looking back at it now and reflecting on it, it's like I was nuts. My goal in the first year was to have 120 people sign up, and we hit it. We had 120 people sign up for our first year. I don't remember how much we raised that year, but since then we've raised about $500 to $7,500 each year.
Wow, great job.
Yeah, and honestly, it was just like, look, at the time I had like 3,000 followers on Twitter. I was like, that's a big, like, I can find people to do a charity tournament for me and find people that will support this. Like, obviously with Scott Fishbowl, like, it's huge and it just continues to grow. I can find 120 people to sign up, right? And so I started a Google form, created it, tweeted it out, promoted it and whatnot, and shared it in group chats and retweet groups that were still a thing back then,
Mhm.
and got it filled. And there was a guy, oh, what's his name? I don't know if he's still active, to be completely honest with you, at least on Twitter, but King Fantasy Sports, I
Sure.
think.
Yeah, Rich King?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He he gave me kind of a spreadsheet that he used for the playoffs and kind of how you did his playoff model, and I used that for the first 2 years um, to really get things going. And then year 3, I think, is when we officially transitioned to polysplayoff.com. Shout out to Rick Butts, the founder of Roto Heat. He's a good friend of mine and I'd say mentor as well. And he actually ended up creating Polly's Playoff for me and used his business background because he's a graphic designer and has a digital marketing company, and used that to create Polly's Playoff for me, and still helps me run that on the back end of things. So that is where we're at now as far as registrations go. We still got to update it for this year. But yeah, that's Polly's Playoff in a broad expanse, if you will. So now if you have other questions, I can expand on that.
Oh, sure, sure. And, first of all,
Excuse me.
I have been fortunate to play in a couple of the Polly's playoff leagues. I kind of hinted that I haven't been entirely successful in the leagues. They're very competitive. I think
They are.
I'm trying to remember, was it Rich Hall? I forgot.
Andrew Hall won this year.
Andrew Hall was in my league, and he won our. I was in league 12,
18.
I think 18.
18.
And so yeah, it's very competitive, but it's also a lot of fun. So and I'll hopefully encourage more to sign up, and we'll leave the links in the YouTube description
Yeah.
for folks who are trying to find where they can get to pollysplayoff.com. I know that there's also like the Google Note or Google Sheet to be able
Yeah.
to.
So eventually, that's one of the things we got to update on the website for this year is basically just get the Google form started over so that it links to the payment platform for this year.
Perfect.
And so once we do that, basically you will go to polysplayoff.com, fill out the form. I think you even can just scroll down to the bottom of the homepage
It does.
and
That's the way it
fill
currently
out the
works. Yeah.
form. Once you fill out the form, it populates for me onto a spreadsheet, and then it takes you directly to your payment link so you can make your donation. So we reduced the minimum donation to $1 just to try and open it up for more people to be able to play in. But typically the average is about 25.
And again, I'm actually looking over at the Polly's Playoff website. There's a beautiful picture of your wife's Nana
Nana,
Polly
yeah.
Robinson, and it gives you kind of the story behind what led to the start of the league. Perhaps you might spend a second or two just kind of filling that out for those who aren't currently looking at the website.
Yeah. So Nana Polly Nana Brunson was Andrea, my wife's grandmother, her dad's mom, and I knew her for about 7 years. Once Andrea and I started dating and got engaged and then married. And my wife's sitting in the background. When was she diagnosed? Do you remember? Was it 2015? So she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's in 2015.
Mhm.
I don't remember if it was immediately after she was diagnosed, but shortly after she was diagnosed, she actually moved in with my in-laws and lived with them for a couple years, and then moved to a facility and lived there until she passed. And I think the thing that I like tried to emphasize is just like especially like if you're directly impacted by it, the losing of the person that you knew is the hardest part. And if like for me, like it was still hard, but it was like I can't think of the word, loads harder on my wife and her
Sure.
family because it's their family member, and they had to experience directly like losing the person that they knew and the person they knew forgetting who they were. Like it got to the point that Polly didn't know Andrea, I don't think, or and typically referred to her as a one of her cousins that
Hmm.
that Andrea favored. Um, and I like to tell the story. I'm drinking a Budweiser right now, but whenever we would go to Mexican, I would order a beer while we were at dinner with Polly.
Hmm.
And at the time, it kind of annoyed me, just being transparent. Like, she would always tell us the same story over and over again about how when she was a
Yes.
teenager, they would make her drink beer to try and help her gain weight. And now looking back at it, it's like, dang, I miss her being able to tell that story.
Yes.
Um, and that it's things like that and that put it into perspective for me for the time that I knew her. But Andrea and her family have so many more stories and so much more experience with who she was that they lost and lost it relatively quickly.
And Alzheimer's is such a devastating, disease, not just to the patient, but also to the family members and friends. My own father passed away in 2003 with complications surrounding
Hmm.
Alzheimer's. And I can remember visiting him, and he wouldn't recognize me, and he would tell me the same story over and over again, just
Yeah,
like you were describing. Um, and so, yeah, it's hard, when you're seeing your father, struggling like that. And so the fact that you're doing this to support an organization, a great organization, the Walk to End Alzheimer's obviously is a great organization to support,
yeah,
makes you that much more, um, you know, enthusiastic about wanting to participate and support this particular the Polly's Playoff League. So
yeah,
really do appreciate you doing that work and
yeah. Of
and
course.
and leading it. Um, how many people typically, or we'll just look at this past year? How many people participated in the league?
What's 18 times 12?
Wow, 18, 12-person leagues. That's a
Yeah,
great number.
yeah.
And you're hoping to grow it?
So the first year we had 120, and then I want to say the second year we had like 180, and then third year we had 240, and then we've dropped back a little bit the past couple of years. So I think we were back to 180 in year 4, and then we were at whatever, I can't do the math. 12 times. Hold on, I'm gonna pull up my calculator real fast because it's bothering me. 18 times 12, 216. So we had
There you go.
216 last year.
Wow.
Um, so I would love to get it back to 240. I think my ultimate goal and what my capacity for working with it right now would probably be like my stretch goal, if you will, Rick, is 480. I think I could handle that. It'd be a lot. I'd probably need a little more help on the background side of
Mhm.
things, but 480 is kind of our goal. Our fundraising goal is really kind of what drives that, and we're trying to get to 10,000 in a year. So
Well,
um,
hopefully getting more attention and hopefully what little this podcast can contribute to that growth is really what the show is all about. Hopefully we can encourage more people in the audience to sign up. I've already signed up for 2025. And then hopefully we'll also be able to help grow the financial number to be able to hit
yeah,
that $10,000 target. I scrolled up on the website to see the rules and the some of the kind of more technical aspects of the league.
yeah,
Is there anything different or unique that you'd like for us to know
yes.
about what's going to be happening and how the league works?
Yeah, so the thing that I think kind of distinguishes us is that we use tiered PPR. So I tier it by distance. It's one of my favorite settings for fantasy football.
Hmm.
I use it in pretty much all of the leagues that I commission. And shout out to my home league dynasty commissioner Dom FFL on Twitter. He's the one that introduced it to me. Um, and so basically, if you're not familiar with what tiered PPR is, especially by distance, is like 0 to 4 yards. I think I have it as a quarter point.
Hmm.
5 to 9 yards, I think, is either a half a point or 0.75.
Hmm.
10 to 19 yards is 1 point. 20 to 29 yards is 1.25. 30 to 39 is 1.5, and then 40 plus is 1.75, if I remember correctly.
Yeah,
And
it's
so
1.75. You've as I'm watching down the website, I could probably pop it up and share it, but you nailed them all.
so
Also special teams player.
Yeah, so I like having special teams players get yardage or points based off of their yardage. So that's something that we include. But I'm changing the scoring a little bit this year.
Ooh,
Um,
share.
so I haven't officially posted this yet, but I've been teasing this since right before the last season started. But as I mentioned earlier, I think I turned 30 this year. And so, as we all know in the fantasy football community, typically when running backs hit that age 30 season, they hit a cliff and they fall off
Hmm.
a cliff. So, I am actually nuking the scoring for running backs. So,
Hmm.
typically we've done your standard running back scoring that's in Sleeper, which is 1 point for every 10 yards, 6 point rushing touchdowns, 2 points for your 2 point conversions. So this year, what I'm doing, I'm not nuking it too bad. I don't think this is still unofficial, so it may go down more. But I'm doing 1 point for every 15 yards, and I'm doing 5 point rushing touchdowns. And I am going to add a third of a point for point per reception for running backs, just to help balance that out a little bit. But and then there still is no tight end premium either.
Okay, well, that's probably going to worry some of the tight end fans, but I'll be honest. If they just jam tight ends in with the rest of the wide receivers and just called them receiver, that would probably be good enough for me since
Yeah.
I always struggle with the tight ends I end up getting on my teams. So it's a lot of interesting scoring twists, and so and as we know every year, say in the Scott Fish Bowl. And kudos to Scott because he makes it interesting every year.
Mhm.
Your league's twists also make this interesting and more fun. So
Yeah.
I love hearing about it, and also thanks for breaking the news on the running back scoring
Yeah, of
on our
course.
show. We always like to break news.
Yeah, I've been teasing it. I did the Women of Fantasy Football show right before the season start. We actually did Polly's playoff mock draft. Um, and I've been teasing it since then, but hadn't officially announced anything. So happy to do that here.
Now, and you mentioned that you want to be able to grow the league, but there's some, I guess, how much time can you put into it?
Yeah.
And it does take, as I mentioned earlier, it takes time away from, family and other obligations. It sounds like Andrea, your wife, is helping at least on some of the organizational things. Do you have others that are helping you,
Yeah.
or this?
So obviously Andrea helps me with basically managing the registrations and the spreadsheet and checking that everybody's donated. And then Rick Butts, as mentioned earlier, he helps manage the website. And then Seth Keller is the final member of my team. He is basically my spreadsheet guru when it comes to the playoffs, and he's coded everything on a spreadsheet for me. So once it comes playoff time, I'm basically like, Seth, help me. And and he runs the numbers for the spreadsheet to see which teams have made it through to the next round of the playoffs, and who initially makes it, who makes it to the next round, and then ultimately determining that champion. So that's the team for now.
Well, and I mean, with the number of people you have working on this, it's an amazing amount of work, and the the results of it are truly inspiring. It's really amazing. Also, and so many. I mean, gee, even the thought behind this podcast was really inspired by all the good that Scott Fish has done with the
Mm-hmm.
Scott Fish Bowl, and it's truly amazing the amount of people who participate and contribute, not just to the league but the podathon and other parts of the activity. But one thing I think I'm hearing as almost a common thread through all the conversations I'm having with people is that Scott Fish has inspired
Yeah.
this league or that league. And so, kudos to Scott and all the work he and his team are doing. And he's got a pretty big team helping
Yeah.
with his, um, but perhaps maybe we'll be hearing about Polly's playoff being with 4,000
That would
entrants.
be nuts.
It would be a lot
I
of
feel like I'd
fun.
have to quit my full-time job to be able to do that.
Oh, you and a large team of people, I'm sure. But
Yeah.
still, your stretch goals seem well within reach, and
Yeah.
again, hopefully we'll be able to help you get into that. um, we've mentioned the website, we've mentioned some of the information about the league, but if people are looking for more information, where would you send them, or what's the best way for them to find out more about the league, about you, and of course about the charity being supported?
Yeah, so I think the easy answer is polysplayoff .com. Everything is typically housed there. If you have any questions after that, then the easiest way is to either DM me directly on Twitter at FFShaneB, or even DM the show account, or not the show account, the tournament account at Polly's Playoff, for any questions. We do have a Discord as well, and I can drop the link for that to you.
That
Um,
would be great too. We could add
those
that to the notes.
honest like from an organizational standpoint, those are a couple of my goals. Is one, be more active in managing the league throughout the season. Like, I pop in and check in, because I have a separate sleeper account for Polly's Playoff, and so I log into that and pop in and check in on the leagues. I want to do it weekly, but honestly, it usually ends up being every few weeks that I do that. So I'd like to do that more, and then get the Discord running more, to where people are interacting in it more than just during the tournament, and chatting with each other throughout that, and asking questions and getting advice even for fantasy football while they're in Polly's Playoff Discord.
And as someone who's been in a few of the leagues, I have to, you know, uh, admit, or that you have been very involved in the chat, on the sleeper chat, the Discord chat, and also just via Twitter, that you've been very generous with advice and encouragement,
Yeah.
especially as I was getting a little discouraged during the season. But you've been super, and again, it just makes you want to be that much more involved in these leagues and supporting this great cause. One other question, and I missed it, but again, one of the hopes of this show is to encourage other people, or the people in the audience to become more involved, to give
Yeah.
back more. And that could be just by participating in leagues and signing up and playing in a lot of these charity leagues and events, but also maybe even trying their own hand, or acting on inspiration that they may want to do a league that's close to them, or supporting a charity that's close to them. One, how would you encourage people, or what would you encourage people to do this? And then what things or advice would you give to help those people move them along in this journey?
Yeah, I mean, I would 100% encourage people to find a way to get involved with charity through their fantasy football. Whether that's starting their own tournament or not is totally up to them. But I will quote Scott: "If you have a platform, no matter how big, do something good with it." So if you think your platform is big enough to start a charity tournament, or if you just want to start a charity tournament, go for it. We actually have a group chat uh, for charity tournament commissioners that Scott is in, and people will ask questions, and I'm asking a lot of questions in there to try and make the tournament more efficient and more fun. So if you do end up starting it, ping me. I'll get you added to that group chat, so you've got more than just my mind to pick when it comes to kind of running it and getting started. But then as far as like other charitable aspects that you can do, and something that I've started to do with leagues that I commish more, and something that I've seen, especially with like the trade addicts leagues that Dynasty Outhouse runs, and other leagues, is have a charitable component. So, um, one league I have, it's just a $10 league. 50% goes to the winner, 50%
Nice.
goes to the winner of the charity of the winner's choice.
So cool.
And another league, it was a $15 buyout. It wasn't their first, third, second, third all got their prizes, and then there was a charitable donation. So that's another way that you can do it, is if you're in a paid league, take 10%, take one entry fee and donate it, is another way that is super easy to give back and affect different charities. And that's the other thing, is like, as far as charity tournaments go, like there's Warrior Bowl, there's Baby Bowl, there's Scott Fish Bowl, there's Polly's Playoff, there's Pros with Joe's. Pros with Joe's is super unique, and I'm personally biased because Eric is a pretty close friend that runs it, but that was really cool because you've got a chance to either one, pick a celebrity, and I'm putting celebrity in air quotes because I'm a pro, and but
I consider you a celebrity, though.
but you can pick a celebrity, or you can pick a charity and find a charity that you want to, play for, and
Beautiful.
donate, and try and get picked as the Joe for a pro. So that's a really cool one. There's a ton of people in that one that are also involved with the Alzheimer's Association. So you don't necessarily have to just be stuck with me if you want to support the Alzheimer's Association. You could pick someone else. So but yeah, there's a ton of different ways for you to get involved as far as charity goes. So just do something is probably my simple advice. Just do something. Find some way that you can get involved, and just do it.
Oh, that's awesome. And we did have Wendy and Michael as guests talking about Pros with Joe's a
Yeah.
couple weeks back. And, again, one thing as I'm talking to more and more people, the support and the encouragement within the fantasy community regarding charity leagues, just regarding fantasy football in general, is really touching and real. And so
Yeah.
it's, like you mentioned with the charity league commissioner chat, people willing to give advice and give support, and encouragement to get people more and more involved and successful in those involvements. So it's, again, it's such a great community
Yeah.
that it again makes me feel better when I get to play a small part, at least, in talking with people like this.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate you coming on the show and talking to me and talking to us about the Polly's Playoff and giving us the opportunity to also learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah.
Um,
Thanks for having me.
oh, and why don't you remind people how people can get a hold of you? I know that your email, your Twitter account is there along with your name in the little green bar below your
Yeah.
face. But sure, you want to remind people how the best way they can reach out to you.
Yeah. The best way is through Twitter at FF Shane B. And then the charity tournament account is at Polly's Playoff. My DMs are open. If you need fantasy football advice, like lineup setting, trades, whatever, like shoot it to me. If you have questions about starting your own charity league, feel free to DM me. Um, I do, like I've mentioned before, I have 4 kids and a full-time job. So if I don't answer immediately, um, especially if it takes a couple days, just ping me again because there's a chance I saw it and just forgot to respond. Um, but yeah, that's the easiest ways to get in touch with me. If you want to get involved more with Polly's Playoff, it's pollysplayoff.com. We'll drop the link to the Discord as well. So if anyone's a Discord savant or just wants to help, engage in Discord more, hit me up. But that's pretty much it for now.
Oh, awesome. And again, thanks for taking the time to talk with us and sharing your story and the story of Polly's Playoff.
Yeah.
And folks, if you are running a charity league and would like to appear on a future Give Back show, the best way to contact me is through Twitter. My DMs are open, and let's see if I can point out right about there is my Twitter account. So please reach out to me, and we'd love to be able to, put you on a show in the future and hopefully help people understand or learn more about you and about what you're doing and provide you with that support. And so next Tuesday night, we hope to be able to showcase another great charity, whether it's a charity league or a charity event. So I hope that you'll, come back and watch next week. But until then, remember to be good, do good, and always give back. Thanks, everyone. And thanks again, Shane.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.